There was a mysterious explosion in Lebanon. Over 100 people are dead, more than 4,000 injured. Here's what's going on. Before we begin, I want to recommend you something special. Okay, so I know that right now you can't visit Israel due to coronavirus. But if there is one thing I can recommend you to do is to go and watch the film I Am Israel. This is an award-winning documentary film that will take you on a magnificent journey through the land of the Bible. It introduces the story of the Jewish people returning home to Israel after 2,000 years, rebuilding, developing, and thriving in their ancestral homeland. The majority of I Am Israel was shot in Judea and Samaria, or as the media likes to call, the West Bank. The film unveils the majestic beauty of these regions, which is barely ever shown by the mainstream media. You can literally see the truth with your own eyes and hear personal stories from Israelis. And this is what I love about this film. And one more awesome thing. I Am Israel is narrated by the amazing actor John Rhys Davies, who you probably know from the Indiana Jones and Lord of the Rings movies. But I have to warn you, this film might cause severe addiction to the land of Israel, but if you're already in love with Israel, then you should be fine. My friend David Kern has put so much effort to produce this film. Go to the website iamisraelfilm.com and start your journey today. Basically, there was a huge explosion at the port of Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. They are still counting the death toll. It's a horrifying situation. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed. More than 300,000 people are displaced without homes. And the capital of Lebanon basically looks like a war zone. Now, the big question is what and who is behind this explosion. Lebanese authorities are still investigating this, but it's important to mention that Israeli officials have said that Israel had nothing to do with it. And even the terror group Hezbollah confirmed that Israel is not behind it, including the Lebanese government. In fact, Israel offered Lebanon emergency humanitarian assistance through international mediators following this situation. And you need to understand that Israel and Lebanon are considered as enemy countries. We do not have diplomatic relations or anything, but humanity has no borders. We cannot see our neighbor Lebanon suffers like that. Hospitals in Israel, and in particular the hospital in Tel Aviv, Ichilov, literally begged Lebanon's government to put politics aside for the sake of the injured people. Israel's hospitals have offered to take in injured people and save their lives. And now I saw that people were asking me, why is Israel offering to help Lebanon if they don't appreciate our help? Or why are we helping Palestinians in Gaza if we are getting rockets in return? And it's important to say that we do not help our neighbors because we need their appreciation. We help them because these are the Jewish values. This is the Israeli values that are within us. Israel has been stretching its hand for peace for decades. And the only interest we have is to have peace in the Middle East, because Israel is not the problem, but the solution to the conflict. I also saw a small minority of Israelis that opposed helping Lebanon and didn't care at all about the lives lost. And it's important to say and understand that they are a minority and do not represent the people of Israel. And now back to the explosions. According to past Israeli intelligence, Hezbollah had a warehouse at the port in Beirut where they stored guided precision missiles. I believe that the explosion happened because of an accident at this warehouse, and reports are saying that it's 242 tons of TNT material that exploded. Imagine how horrible it is that Hezbollah stored missiles at the port right next to where people live, next to civilians, and basically risking their lives at the cost of storing missiles that are obviously meant to be fired at Israel at some point. Hezbollah's leader, Nasrallah, actually taunted Israel in 2016, saying this.
قنبلة نووية بمعنى كم صاروخ من عنا زائد هول حاويات الأمونيا بحيفا نتيجتهم نتيجة قنبلة نووية. طيب وبيقول لك إنه يجي كم صاروخ ينزلوا بهاي الحاويات بمنطقة يسكنها 800,000 نسمة يقتل منهم عشرات الآلاف.
How ironic that the same thing that he wished Israel just happened to Lebanon. And it's definitely on Hezbollah that so many people and families have lost their beloved ones. It's still being investigated, but it's honestly not going to change the result. A ruined capital of Lebanon. Now you have to understand, people were protesting because of the failing economy in Lebanon, and now coronavirus literally destroyed their economy even more. People have no jobs, they cannot provide for their families, and honestly this explosion is the last thing they needed in Lebanon. And what's really interesting to see is that people in Lebanon are openly saying on social media that they were told for decades that Israel is the enemy, but they are seeing that the enemy is right there in Lebanon. And of course they are referring to Hezbollah's leader Nasrallah. They are honestly right. The enemy of Lebanon is not Israel, it's Hezbollah. But the big problem is that this terror organization is well rooted in Lebanon. They are in the government, and the government of Lebanon is actually fully relying on Hezbollah's support. Imagine how bad this situation is, considering the fact that Iran is funding and training Hezbollah's terrorists. So basically Iran is running Lebanon through Hezbollah. And all of this with the bigger goal to destroy Israel in the end. And well, people in Lebanon have had it. They are sick and tired of Hezbollah ruining their country. And I hope that this will begin a new chapter of Lebanese people rising up against Hezbollah and uprooting this terror organization from the beautiful country of Lebanon. I'm praying for peace. I hope to see Lebanon thriving, and even more than that, I hope to see a friendship between Israel and Lebanon. I will see you in the next week. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel.